Ladies and gentlemen, Minnesota now has plans to deploy the National Guard 10,000 soldiers to Minneapolis protest over George Floyd. This came out May 30th, 2020. USA Today. Minnesota National Guard plans to deploy as many as 10,000 troops to respond to unrest in Minneapolis, a massive increase over the 850 now on duty. Meantime, the Pentagon has offered to assist Minnesota with active duty troops. So far, Tom Walz, which is the governor, has not sought help from federal troops, according to a statement from Jonathan Hoffman, a Defense Department spokesman. In Minnesota, the National Guard is activating as many as 10,000 soldiers and airmen, said Major Scott Hawks, a spokesman for the Minnesota National Guard. On Saturday morning, there were 858 guardsmen on duty. By afternoon, another 1,000 were expected to bolster that force, Hawks said. This is a moving number of guardsmen are in a continuous process of coming on orders as we are increasing our support to the state and community, Hawks said in an email. The number of National Guard troops activated is expected to be between 2,500 and 10,000, he said, but likely to be closer to the upper end of that range. The Pentagon will make active duty forces ready to deploy quickly if needed, Hoffman said. As a prudent planning measure, the department has directed U.S. Northern Command to increase the alert status of several units should they be requested by the governor to support Minnesota authorities, Hoffman said. These are units that normally maintain a 48-hour recall to support state civil authorities for several contingencies, like natural disasters, and are now on 4-hour status. A senior Pentagon official downplays orders to active duty units to prepare for possible deployment. Prepare to deploy orders are common and are used for hurricanes and events like national political conventions. It's anticipated that National Guard troops will be capable of handling the current mission, said the official who was not authorized to speak publicly about military planning. And active duty forces would likely fill support and logistics roles. The use of federal troops to respond to domestic disturbances has been rare. The last time was in 1992, following unrest in Los Angeles, following the Rodney King case. Boy, do I remember that. According to a Congressional Research Service report in January, King was a motorist beaten by police, and their acquittal sparked riots. States have the preliminary responsibility and authority for civil order under the Constitution, but governors and legislatures can request federal protection against domestic violence, according to the report. The Insurrection Act also authorized the president to call up military forces for civil unrest, and the law was amended to allow for the protection of civil rights. The act has been invoked dozens of times, but rarely since the 1960s civil rights disturbances, according to the report. Well, despite the fact that they told people to stay home and all that stuff, they're back out in the streets. and they're going to continue to be out in the streets. Look, nobody's working now, you know? And like I said, you're going to have a harder time getting people to follow instructions, even with your National Guard, even with your police, because people are now tired. They're tired. And this thing about you want to give instruction to protesters, but you don't want to say nothing to your cops, you will have a hard time with that as well. But hey, you chose to run your system like this. So now deal with deal with the fallout now. You know, the problem with these folks, they think everything's going to run smoothly 100% of the time, and they're very unrealistic. And then when things like this jump off, they're like, oh, it'll diminish. No, no. There was something very different about watching that guy die on the street, murdered in plain daylight. So, because it's not an ordinary circumstances, you're not going to get an ordinary response from the crowds. And this should show you. You notice this protest is way bigger than the ones y'all had over the past few weeks over reopening the country. Those protests look like a kindergarten class compared to the size of this one. And it just goes to show you how unfavorable cops are in America. Protests are breaking out all over the country, and people are coming out by the thousands to show a lot of disdain towards your cops. You did it all to yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.